Hopefully you'll enjoy the event and find it engaging and exciting. Aurelia has started, I believe, to record the event. So if anyone has a problem with being in a recording, feel free to turn your video off and you won't show up. So, and any questions about that after, do let me know. We also will share the recording with everyone in case you want to refer back to anything that was said or shared today. So basically, as Aurelia has already alluded to, we started the environmental talks a few months ago at the end of last year. And initially it's starting with a 6-event series where where we can talk about different environmental issues. So far, we've tackled consumption and we've tackled climate change. And this is our talk looking at sustainable finances. And we're very excited to have 2 great speakers with us, which I'll introduce in a moment. But essentially a little bit about me and why I'm here bringing these talks to you is obviously the Impact Hub has reached out to me to participate in these, but I am a marine biologist and kind of environmental scientist. I studied climate change and policy in my master's and worked in a variety of roles from coral reef conservation to air pollution to plastic pollution. And I just love talking about the environment and helping make sustainability more interesting and exciting for people and providing everyone with real tangible ways where we can all kind of contribute to making a difference. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Please do keep your mics on mute, and we will open up for a Q&A later on, but we will try and use the chat function and just send any questions you have to the group there. Please do introduce yourself and where you're from if you'd like, or where you're connected to business-wise, or whatever it is that you want to identify with. As you provide a question, it's just great to know who some of our participants are. And the 2 speakers that we have are Henna Shah, who's from Make My Money Matter. She's a campaign manager at Make My Money Matter, which is an awesome campaign trying to move the trillions of pounds that we've invested into our pensions into building a better world. I won't steal more from that because she's really going to say some fantastic things, and I'm very excited to have her here. And we have Jen, who is the founder of Sustainable-ish, which is a fantastic website full of amazing resources. And she calls herself an ordinary knackered mum of 2, but Jen is full of amazing resources. She spent a whole year dragging her family into an idea of not buying anything at all, which I think is absolutely phenomenal. So I'm really excited to hear from them both, and hopefully together we'll have some really great guides and information on how to be more sustainable and with our money. And the reason that we wanted to tackle this issue today is I know everyone's in lockdown and we're all sitting at home and we're all sitting at the screens and behind our computers, which can be, tiring at most, and it's hard to feel like we can do anything sustainable. But what we hopefully will provide with you today are some really nice tangible actions you can take at home from your computer, looking at your banks and your pension, which might not sound that exciting, but hopefully it'll be a little more exciting for you today. Anyway, I will stop talking now, and I'm going to pass over to Henna. So thank you everyone again for coming. Oh, I always forget this. So one thing is we are using Mentimeter. So if you haven't used this before, it's very simple. You can use it on your phone or on your screen. So take a minute now, everyone, and you go to menti.com and you just punch in that number there. So on the screen, we'll just punch that in, and you should get this question: do you know where your bank invests its money? And it really is just changing the screen over. So the number for that, sorry, let me see if we can get the number in the chat. But if you haven't got to menti.com, hello, Sue from Kent. Thank you for introducing yourself. And Diana, there it is. So menti.com, and the number is now in the chat, 905-9448. Okay, and then you should get a question: do you know where your bank invests its money? And you can choose yes, no, or maybe you think so. So if you submit the question, you can see now on the screen how many of us know where our money is. So 58% so far don't know where our bank invests our money, which is why we're here. So I think, and 25% are saying they think so, but they're not sure. I'm somewhat in that category. I don't think it's somewhere good. I've had a little bit of a look already this week with Henna and Aurelia, but I think yeah, I think I'm a little scared to know the details of it. And that's something I want to hopefully look into and work on switching, which is why I'm very excited about tonight myself. So I'll just give it another minute. But yeah, I mean, it looks like the overwhelming majority, about 2/3 of us, don't know where our bank invests our money. And that's kind of an important thing to think about, especially if you're here joining an environmental talk. You obviously care about the environment. And so it's good to know that our money is supporting sustainable things and not things that are hurting it. Now I will stop talking and I will pass you over to Hannah. Aurelia is just going to switch back over to the presentation. But Hannah, why don't we welcome you to our virtual stage?
Hi everyone, thanks for the intro and thank you so much for having me. It's really exciting to see so many people choose after a day of normally staring at screens to stare at a screen for an extra hour to learn about sustainable finance. So I applaud you for that. I won't take up too much of your time, but I just wanted to come and tell you about Make My Money Matter. Exactly as Stav said, we're a people-powered campaign, and basically we have a really simple aim at the core. We want to help people know where their money goes and help people take action to change it. And the campaign was co-founded by Richard Curtis. You might know of him from various films and TV shows, but also from lots of activism. So he's co-founder of Comic Relief, and he's involved in Make Poverty History, and he's also one of the United Nations ambassadors for the Sustainable Development Goals. And sort of Make Your Money Matter emerged late in 2019, and it feels like a really long time ago now, even though it wasn't that long ago. And it basically came from the fact that we know we have these Sustainable Development Goals. We know they'll make the world a much better place. They include tackling the climate crisis, tackling poverty, loads of stuff that we really want to see and that is really important. But really, we don't have the money to make that happen. And he was talking about Make Poverty History, which is all about telling countries, look, you should do your bit. And then Comic Relief, which is about talking to individuals and saying, look, you can donate, it's really important that you do this. And actually realize that there was this whole thing called private finance that we think of, and it's like tall tower blocks, HSBC, and people walking around in suits. And it feels really remote from us, but it's actually our cash. And I'll move on to talk about why we're starting with pensions now. So pretty much everyone has a pension. If you're lucky enough to be working, I know lots of people sort of my age are auto-enrolled, so we have to be in a pension now. And we know there are retirement savings, but the majority of people don't realize that that cash is actually just invested through banks in the stock market. And that means it's invested in big companies, small companies, at home and abroad. And although they're using our cash that we're saving to fund their activities, where they're making shoes, making food, whatever it is, actually we don't have any say over how they operate, how they run their businesses, what they pay, how they treat the environment, whether they're climate friendly, whether they're sustainable. And we really want to change that, because actually that £3 trillion, which is in UK pensions, that cash is ours. That's money all of us are saving every month so that we can have a really good retirement. And actually, I think what we've seen from the wildfires and the climate crisis is that actually it looks like the world isn't really heading in a direction where, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to retire into a world where there's loads of wildfires, where people are having to flee their homes because of climate change and all the horrible stuff that's happening. And I think, just to come back to the idea of finance as being quite remote, it's not. Your cash could be going through a bank, and it could be investing in things like coal mining, right? Or you could be investing in things like solar energy. You could be a vegan or a vegetarian because you care about the environment, but at the same time, you could be investing in factory farming. And we think that's wrong, right? Because I'm pretty sure if you're here and you're one of the 36 people on this call, you try and live a pretty sustainable lifestyle. You try and eat green, you might have a renewable energy provider, you might be trying to fly less, but actually compared to the impact that those consumer things have, the impact your investments have is so many times greater. And I just want to ask a question now, which is, click the next slide. If you go to menti.com, I just want to test and see what people think about this question. So what percentage of the UK public want their money invested for good? And the reason I'm asking this is because lots of the time people think that sustainable finance and investing in good things is something that people don't want to do. But we'll show you some different. So we're gonna have it open.
There you go. Can people see the question on their screens? Yeah, great.
Yeah. The number is 9059448.
Yeah, you can see it at the top of the screen here as well. Not sure why this is not. Give me a second. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, there you go. You all got it right, which is great. So actually a survey that was done in late 2019 by the Department for National Development asked people this question. They asked a really interesting survey if you're a nerd like me, but they asked people lots of questions about what kind of things they wanted their money invested in. And I was really surprised that 70% of people said, actually, I want my cash to be doing something that's positive. And I really encourage it, if you're interested in this and the way people are thinking about it in more detail, to have a look at the survey, because there were even, I think the majority of people also said they would be happy to take lower returns if that was the case, which is really, really interesting and not something that I was expecting at all. I was going to talk really briefly about pensions and climate. And although Make My Money Matter, so in the next slide, please. Now, Make My Money Matter is quite a broad campaign. We're talking generally about the Sustainable Development Goals, but one of the things we're really focusing on this year, and we were last year, is climate. That's because of COP26, and that's also because we think that the climate crisis is the one crisis that affects all the others. You can work on poverty, you can work on labour rights, you can work on gender equality, but actually if we don't crack the climate crisis, then none of that really matters, because it's such an existential threat to all of us. And what we've really seen is that while companies have said, okay, we're going to go net zero, we're going to do good things for the climate, we care about sustainability, actually financial institutions are really opaque, exactly as we were talking about earlier. They're far away from us, they're difficult to engage with, they don't feel the pressure from campaigners or civil society nearly as much. And actually what we realize is the people that they need to feel pressure from is people like you and me, people who have money in a bank or money in a pension, to say, look, you might be moving really slowly on climate and you might think that you can get away with it, but actually you can't, because I'm a customer of yours and I want my pension or my bank account to be invested in something that's good for the climate. And if not, I'll move to a provider that is doing that good. And that's why that's really, really important. And the thing we're asking for, particularly around climate, is that in line with the Paris Agreement, we want every UK pension to be aligned with net zeros. That means we want them to be net zero on emissions by 2050 and halving emissions by 2030. And we think that's a really important sort of baseline to be moving for, because actually most of the financial world just isn't there at all. If you get the next slide, we've actually been, and it's really fun that I can say this, is that we're a really young campaign, but we've already been really successful. So far we've had, amongst others, we've had Nest, which is a big auto-enrollment provider. There should be a few people here who are members of Nest. Aviva, who some of you will have heard of. BT, who most of you will have heard of. And the Northern LGPS, which are 4 huge local government pension funds. And so I think it's Greater Manchester, Merseyside and West Yorkshire. And as you can see, in terms of the volume of pure money that's been moved, that's huge. So all 4 of those funds have said, yes, actually, we think climate's really important. We think it poses a real risk to the savings and investments of our members. And we want to make sure that we invest in a sustainable way. And actually, you can see that, there's almost, my maths is a bit dodgy, but there's almost £200 billion there, which, if you think about it in comparison to any lifestyle choices that you can make, is just astronomically larger. So now I can tell you what you can do. So the thing about pensions is, and I'm sure Jen will tell you, lots of things that you can do as an individual quite easily to make your life more sustainable. The thing about pensions is it's not quite as easy. It's a bit more complicated, and sort of my personal view is that I think they make it a bit complicated on purpose because pensions are boring. But there are a couple of things that you can do to make sure this changes. So the first thing you should do is question your pension. So if you're employed, if you have a workplace pension, actually what we've seen, and we've seen some really surprising people. I've had people ring me from investment banks saying, I work in the sustainability department of an investment bank. I've just realized that our pension isn't sustainable. Can you help me make our pensions sustainable, which is amazing. I think you should go to your employer and say, look, where's my pension? Where is my pension? What is my pension? Is it invested sustainably? What does it look like? Have you told me where it's invested? And if I work at this company, do you think it's okay that our pension's invested in fossil fuels or arms or whatever it is? And are you happy with that? And ask for more, because actually the workplaces that you work for, they're the customers. They can call up your pension provider and say, we want something that's more sustainable, greener, and much better for the climate than this. And then the second thing you can do is share the message. I think from our point of view, it's hard to switch, but what it's really easy to do is to tell more people about this. The more people who are asking questions about pensions, who are going to their HR departments, who are telling their colleagues, and who are having this conversation, the more pension providers and financial institutions will have to take notice, because after all, the customer's always right. So I'm going to give you 2 things before I hand over, which is speak to your HR department or your finance director or your colleagues and ask them where your pension is invested and if it's sustainable, particularly, is it committed to net zero? And secondly, share the message. Start talking to people about their pensions. Ask them where it is. I know pensions sound boring, but they have a huge impact on our world, so that's really important.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was really interesting. And whenever you tell us that there's £3 trillion of our money sitting in pensions, my mind wants to implode a little bit. But that's, really interesting. And thank you for that. Just so everyone knows, after the Q&A, we have put together a kind of toolkit, a kind of infographic of all these, the advice that Hannah and Jen are providing. And we'll actually go through that at the end real quick, just so you know exactly how to navigate it. So you'll get all this information in writing, and that will be sent to all of you participants after the event. So do stay tuned for that. And I'm just going to hand over real quick to Jen. So Jen from Sustainable-ish, take it away.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Hannah. That was amazing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the rest of our money besides pensions, and I think. I'll start again. I run an organization. That sounds very grand. I don't, it's just me. I run Sustainable-ish, which is a website and a podcast and sort of a lot of social media, and also I run sort of courses and have a membership, and it's all about imperfect eco-action. It's all about the ish is really important. It's all about this idea that we don't need to do everything perfectly, because there is often no perfect green way to do things. There's often, you know, I always talk about there's no green and white, there's an awful lot of shades of green in between, and it's trying to find the things that will work for you, will work for your lifestyle, will work for your family. But I think money is something I spent a long time, and I still spend a lot of time, talking about the power of our money when it comes to the choices that we make, especially at the checkout. So in things like, you know, the things that we choose to buy, whether we choose to buy organic or fair trade. And there's a brilliant quote by somebody called Anna Lappe that says, when we spend money, we're casting a vote for the kind of world that we want. And I understand that that's very idealistic, and that we're not always maybe in a financial position to make that choice, or we're not just those things aren't available, but to kind of have that idea at the back of our minds, and that, you know, our part of our power as individuals and as households is in the power of our pounds. But it took me kind of a long time to really sort of realize that actually our money has a huge amount of power, not just when it's in our purses and our wallets and when we're spending it, but when it's in our bank accounts as well, and when it's in our pensions. That kind of blew me away a bit. I was like, why, how has it taken me so long to join these dots and things? But in exactly the same way as a lot of our pensions might unfortunately be invested in things like fossil fuels, in arms, in tobacco, in things that, you know, we would never in a million years go and kind of hand our money over to. The same can apply to our current accounts and any savings accounts that we've got as well. And it kind of, you know, is really almost upsetting to realize that actually I'm working so hard as an individual to make these changes, some of which are a bit of a pain, you know. It's not always easy, and I'm doing everything I can, and maybe I've moved my energy supplier to a renewable energy company because I don't want to be, you know, my money to be investing in fossil fuels and things. And then actually to realize that my money that's been sat even just in my current account, or any money that I've worked really blooming hard for to you know, put away into savings and things like that, or maybe you're investing for your kids or whatever, that could actually be directly funding the very things that I'm working so hard to sort of move against. So that was a real kind of almost a bit of a wake-up call for me. And I was doing a little bit of research around this, and this is from an article on Triodos Bank website, and I'll mention Triodos in a minute, but it's an article from 2019, so you can imagine we're, you know, at least a year on from that. But they were saying that UK banks have poured £150 billion into the fossil fuel industry since the Paris Agreement was sort of adopted in 2016. So that's, you know, despite the country signing up to this agreement that says we're going to keep we're going to do everything we can to keep temperature rises, global temperature rises, below 1.5 degrees. Our banks, our money is still being kind of poured into the fossil fuel industries. So that's quite enraging, really, isn't it? That they're taking our money and that they're doing that. So I can't even remember what the next slide is. Really, do you want to move on to it? So yeah, what about our other accounts? You know, our current accounts might just feel like you know, money in, money out, and you know, there might be a bit of overdraft. It might not feel like there's a lot of money sort of available in there maybe for banks to use, but for some people there will be. And all those little collective amounts of a few £100s left at the end of the month, the banks are using those to invest. They're using all our money all the time to invest and to make a return, and that's how they make their money. So in the same way that moving your pension is a hugely powerful thing to do, moving your current account is a hugely powerful thing to do as well. So there's a brilliant website which is in the toolkit that Stav's brilliantly put together, called switchit.money, and you can go on there, and it's got a little sort of, you know, drop down box, and you can find on there, they've got an energy provider one and they've got a bank one, and you can, and then I think they've got a pension one, but it links through to Make My Money Matter. So you go on there, you pick your bank, and then it will tell you how well or otherwise they rate. You know, some of the, well, none of the big high street banks are particularly covering themselves in glory, let's put it like that. But that's a really, it's really interesting to just go and you might go, and especially if you're with, I think sort of HSBC, Barclays, you'll get this big terrible come up and you just, oh my God. But as well as giving you that information, it will also then give you suggestions for more sustainable versions of current accounts that you can move to. There's a couple of other great resources there. Goodwithmoney.com is a website that sort of the guys there talk about, teaching you how to be sort of good with your money and making sure that banks and things are being good with your money as well. Loads of information on there, including, how to find an ethical, independent financial advisor. There's money on ethical current accounts, credit cards, all kinds of things. So loads of information on there if you are someone who wants to dig a bit deeper. And Ethical Consumer is they've got a brilliant money section. And again, that will give you the sort of headlines of who are the goodies and who are the baddies in this. Sort of headline things taken from Ethical Consumer: HSBC, Barclays, First Direct, who I think are part of HSBC, and also M&S Money, who are 50% owned by HSBC, are all doing particularly badly. And the good guys are Triodos, who I've already mentioned. They are pretty much the market leader in the UK, and probably I would imagine in Europe when it comes to ethical and sustainable banking. So they do current accounts, which they've only recently, it's in the last couple of years, they've bought out a current account. Even the debit card that comes with it is plant-based. Is plant-based plastic, so that you can feel good every time you're flashing your card in the shops. And they also do ISAs, they do, various savings accounts and things like that. So if you're looking for a sort of genuine, and they're so transparent about what they're investing in, and they really invest in some amazing social enterprises, sustainable businesses and things. If you're looking for a more kind of traditional high street option, then the building societies tend to do a little bit better in this. So Nationwide always tends to score pretty well. Co-op has traditionally done very well. And then some of these sort of challenger banks, the Starling and Monzo, actually, I was talking to somebody from Good With Money, and she described them as sort of ethically neutral. So they're not necessarily doing really amazingly good stuff like Triodos, but they're also not doing a lot, they're not doing the really bad investing like Barclays and HSBC and things. So those are, and I think the next slide is going to be another, like Henna's What Can I Do? She says. Yay. So, the whole point of, hopefully coming to an event like this is that there's some action that comes out of it. So, go on, Make My Money Matter, have a look at what your pension's doing, and exactly all those brilliant actions that Henna came up with. And the same as an individual, get informed, find out where your money is being invested when it's in your current account. Take a screenshot of your drop down thing on Switch It Money, share that on social media, like with friends and family, just go, oh my God, I had no idea about this. Did you guys know? Because it feels like this thing that nobody knows, and we'd all be really hacked off about if we knew it. So, take a screenshot, share that, and because that's a really lovely non-judgmental way. You're not saying like you're all gits if your money's still in these banks. You're just saying, wow, I didn't know that this was the case. And go and have a look at what your bank's doing. So, get informed and find out. Then, if you are in a position to move your money, that's sending a really strong signal. You can also sort of amplify that action by then emailing the people that you've just left and saying, I just thought I'd let you know I've actually moved my money out of your account because I'm so disappointed at your sort of track record on the climate and on fossil fuel investments. And that's really, can you imagine if 100 people emailed them, 1,000 people emailed them, and this is part of what the Make My Money campaign is doing around pensions. The more of us that are making our voices heard, because our choices are powerful, but our voices are really powerful as well, the more that they will start, the more fuss we can make on social media. They're going to hopefully be embarrassed enough at some point to do something about this. So you can ask your bank, or you can find out your bank what they're doing. You can move your money. It's your money. You've worked hard for it. You can do exactly what you want with it. And yeah, sharing when you've moved and who you've moved to and how easy it was. Because I think, a lot of the time we feel like the same as moving energy supply maybe, and especially more so with banks. I think in Britain we have a tradition of really not wanting to move banks. It feels like something we put in the too hard box. We feel like we should do, but oh my God, it's dull and it's boring and it's going to take me ages. Actually, you know, it's really quite easy now. All of the major banks sign up to a direct debit guarantee, so they will shift all your direct debits over for you. If anything gets missed, they usually guarantee that they will kind of, you know, and you get any penalties because of that, they guarantee that they will do that. So it is absolutely much easier than you think. And, you know, the power, it might feel like, oh, I've only got a couple of £100 in my current account, but if you think there's millions of people in the country who've only got a couple of £100 in their current account, moving it is a hugely powerful thing to do. So, but first step, go on switchit.money and have a look and see how you feel about what your bank is investing in. So I think that's my quick rattle through.
Thank you so much, Jen. No, that was fascinating. And I love what you said about you know, not everything's white and green. I think that's very clever, and there are lots of shades to it. We do have some great questions in the chat, so I'm just gonna go through those and read some out. I love this story from Rebecca that she'd switched from M&S to Triodos because Triodos was better, but she had no idea that M&S was so bad. And then later she commented to say that you made a good point, that M&S never asked why they left or said anything about sorry to see you go, whereas Triodos did say hello on social media. So it just shows you how, you know, switching and having an impact there can be, you know, can have an impact on both you as a customer and the business. Rachel had asked earlier, she'd be interested in learning about government pension funds, how to influence them. Hannah, do you have any feedback or thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Really good question. I think Rebecca also highlighted that some are unfunded. So there are two kinds, without getting too technical, there are two kinds of sort of public sector pension fund. There are the funds like the NHS funds, which are unfunded, which basically means that an NHS pension is a promise from the government to pay your pension when you're old. And then there are local government pension funds. And local government pension funds are basically funds where lots of local employers, so it might be local authority schools, it might be other local authority services, all say, okay, you're working for us, we're invested in a pool with lots of other employers, and here's your local authority pension fund. And actually there's been incredible work by campaigners, it's been going on for decades, but it's really started to accelerate now with more and more local councils, because they've been declaring climate emergencies and they're really starting to care about the climate crisis, and really pushing the funds forward. And actually what I would say is that there is some amazing local groups wherever you live. Try and find out who the local groups are, because I've been going around speaking to people. There are people in Surrey, there are people in Wales, there are people in Manchester, who are all trying to influence this work. And one of the great things about a local government pension fund is that councillors have representation on their boards, so you can say to your local councillor, look, I'm your constituent, this is really important to me, this is really important to me as a local resident. And also it means that people working in the local area whose retirement savings are in the fund can say as well, look, it's our cash, we want you to invest it in a really sustainable way. So I would say start organising. I mean, there are groups who turn up to open meetings and ask questions and ask about plans. And I think what I would say is that lots of local government pension funds are generally staffed by people who really care about public service. They really want to do the right thing. They really care about the public sector. And a lot of the time, what I find is that they're quite nervous, because obviously as a trustee or as a fund manager, you're basically taking responsibility for how people will live in retirement. So I think it's really important to bear that in mind and just express your views. And at Make Your Money Matter, one of the things that we do is when people have been doing like great grassroots campaigning action on local pension funds, we say, okay, we can come in and we can speak to the CEO and we can say, what does that look like in practice? What does a reasonable plan look like in practice that other local pension funds are also working on, because I think it's quite scary if you're working for a local government pension fund and you've been asked for this thing that you think is really radical and that no one else is working on, but people are working on it. So it's important that we push them, and we can help with that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for that. Next couple of questions, I'm going to put them together because I think Jen might be able to tackle both of them. Is someone, Sophia's asking, is your money protected with Troidus? I have trouble pronouncing the name. And then another comment from Laura, which is, I've been struggling to find an ethical credit card. Any tips would greatly be appreciated. So maybe you can tackle
definitely.
the two in one, Jen.
As far as I'm aware, Triodos, in exactly the same way as the other major banks in the UK, are all signed up to this. You know, it was after like Northern Rock, wasn't it? And then they said they would protect, is it up to 85,000, I think, in an individual account. You can tell I'm not actually a financial expert at all. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, Triodos are signed up to in exactly the same way as other banks would be. And the question about credit cards is a brilliant one, because I've been struggling with that as well. And it just like hadn't occurred to me either. I was like, okay, we've moved our current account, tick, feeling really great. And you know, moved some other things, and well done us, and feeling quite smug. And I was like, oh my God, our credit card. And as you say, really hard to sort of find anything. On the Good With Money site, actually, and Stav has put this in the toolkit, there's a blog post, I think something like the 4 most ethical credit cards in 2021. Nationwide are on there. I think Co-op Smile card is another one. And then there were 2 other ones as well. So that's a really good, and that's in the resource kit that Stav is going to distribute to everybody at the end. But yeah, it's really, there seems to be a big hole in the market somewhere for a nice ethical bank to sort of, or maybe we ought to all start nudging Triodos to come and help us all out with a credit card. But yeah, those, I think Nationwide and Co-op were the ones that definitely the names that I recognised on there.
I've also heard good things about Co-op's banking and credit. So that is, I mean, I don't have one yet, but I would say that is one to investigate. We had another question from Rachel saying that she wants to choose an ethical bank, but how do you choose which ethical bank to go with? Is it better to encourage smaller banks rather than the big ones like Troidus? So maybe, you know, there's a credit union or something smaller that is worth supporting. I don't know if either of you want to have any input on that, Jen or Hannah.
I mean, I would say Triodos probably are one of the smaller players still at the moment, and definitely when we compare them to the big high street banks and things. So you are, with Triodos, supporting one of the smaller banks. They are, I mean, I just really rate them as a company. You know, there's not many financial institutions I think many of us would rate. Their transparency is just phenomenal. You know, you can look on there and they genuinely, you know, they are walking the walk. They are putting their money where their mouth is, quite literally. You can see a big list of all the amazing things that they're investing in. Their customer service is, you know, I found it to be really good. So, you know, for me, and I guess some of it will depend on what your values are as well. You know, if you're looking particularly at savings, then you might want to look at, I mean, we've got a small amount of money in a renewable, sort of, there was a share offer on locally with our local wildlife trust for building a solar farm. So, you know, like we chose to invest a small amount of money in that and we get a small return from that. So you might want to, you know, if you are fortunate enough to have some bits of money to invest, you might want to sort of spread that out so it's suiting your values, but obviously there's your own sort of due diligence and work to be done, making sure that your money is protected, making sure that you're going to get the return that you want. So always, you know, do take the advice of an independent financial advisor. But, you know, I think your money is as safe, you know, is our money ever safe? You know, you can, when you're with a bank like Triodos, they are tried and trusted, you know, although they feel like a newcomer on the scene in terms of how long all the traditional banks have been around. But, you know, I would really trust them and be very happy to give them my money for them to look after.
Yeah, just to add to that really briefly, they're a partner of ours, and yeah, they're a fantastic partner, and they are doing really leading work in like the advocacy space in finance as well, which I'm really impressed by. They're not only offering the service to people, but they're actually taking their message to the financial sector as a whole, which I think is really important. And if you like Lily Cole, she's her brand ambassador. So there you go.
Thanks so much, Hannah and Jen. That's fantastic. We have a couple more questions I'm going to smush together, and then we'll get to the toolkit because I want to give us enough time to kind of walk through that. And then if anyone has questions while we're doing that, we can tackle them. So Raj has asked, he says that, however, this key parameter is totally ignored by financial industry and economists. And I believe the key parameter is this kind of sustainability aspect that we're discussing. This is where we really need change. Do you see this happening naturally anytime soon? How do we push? And just to go with that, Michelle wrote that she'd like to write to her current bank to stop investing in fossil fuels. Any tips on what exactly to say? I feel like both of you have good input there. So if we can just quick kind of fire round of 1 minute answers from each of you, and then we'll get to the toolkit.
Yeah, of course. I'll start. I think that's a really good point, and Raj, and that's part of the reason that Make Your Money Matter exists. We know that this can't happen. We can't do this alone, and this is not something that finance will do for themselves, which is why it's really important to push on sustainability. One of the things I have seen is that industry and really progressive people within industry are starting to organise themselves, but I think it's important that we have a really strong public facing element and say to the public, look, these people are starting to move, but we need you to move faster, because actually this is about an existential risk to all of us, not just about whether your institution is having a tough time moving some cash, which is completely honest. And on letters, so we have some sample letters which we use to send to pension funds, so you can have a look there. But what we encourage people to do is be really specific and say, so they say, are you net zero, i.e. halving emissions by 2030 and go net zero by 2050, which we think is really important. And also what it really does, name and shame if you want, what we've seen is we've really exposed the fact that pension providers' comms are really bad. Someone sent in a letter and got back 100-page black and white booklet about their climate change strategy, and it was just rubbish. And the more you do that and the more you say this isn't acceptable, the more they'll change.
Fantastic.
Love that. Brilliant.
Jen?
I would say very quickly that I do the podcast for Good with Money, and it talks to a lot of investment advisors, a lot of sort of investment banks and things, and my take from them is that they are moving increasingly quickly, because actually they're getting much better returns. It's not like that's this nice kind of the crunchy green nice to have that will make us, you know, keep some of our customers happy if we do that, and they're happy to accept a lower return. Absolutely not. These funds are outperforming the more traditional funds. So that is really, you know, if saving the planet isn't going to incentivize them, if saving humanity, then hopefully, you know, the fact that they get better returns. And completely echo what Hannah's saying about, you know, sort of asking these questions. The whole name and shame thing, ask these questions on social media. So if you go onto their Facebook page, if you @ them on Twitter, you know, and then if they don't reply, just keep going. Really, why haven't you replied to this? Really interested. It feels a bit like you're hiding something, you know, and they will probably come back to you with something to sort of fob you off. But, you know, keep going until you're happy that you've got the answer that you wanted. And they are much more likely to respond to you and respond to you positively on social media, because it's a very public platform and everybody can see them. So absolutely, you know, don't be afraid to, again, use your voice and to use social media as this sort of force for good.
Yeah, thank you so much. What I actually did, tagging to advertise this event on my personal social media, is tag HSBC after I used Switch It and said, oh my God, I just found out that HSBC is really, really terrible. So I'm hosting this talk and people should come join me and find out about their banks. And that was, you know, kind of my my opening line to having this talk. So I've just shared my screen now with the toolkit. Can we get a nod? People can see this. Perfect. So Hannah and John, I welcome you to unmute yourselves, because I'll have you really talk through it as you really provided the resources for this. But like I said, we're going to send this along to everyone who's joined today. And this is hopefully something that can help you, you know, take the necessary steps and action to, I'll just zoom in a little bit, to make your money matter. So Hannah, or Jen, I think you were going to start us off.
So I love what that Stav's put this brilliant toolkit together, and Hannah said, oh my God, you've made it look like exciting, which, you know, the money and pensions and things, I always say, oh God, it's really dull. But you know, if I would love you to stay at your computer for 5 minutes after we leave and just go to Switch It and have a look and see how your bank is performing and share that. You know, you don't have to move it today. If you do, amazing, but maybe give yourself a deadline. Actually, I'm gonna look at it tonight and I'm gonna have moved it by the end of February, and put that in your diary so that you can't just kind of forget about it and move on. So exactly, you know, look at your current account, look at your savings, and look at your credit card as well. And Stav's linked there to that blog post in on Good with Money as well. So, you know, you don't have to do everything all at once. Like I said, just do it step by step. So Switch It, you know, have a think about your current account, and then maybe you look at your credit card and all those sorts of things. And then Henna's gonna encourage you to take pension action as well.
Taking pension action. So thanks, Jen. That's really good. And yeah, this toolkit is beautiful. I'm obsessed with it. I think pensions a little bit more complicated. I think, as I said in my presentation, first step, really just talk to your employer if you have a pension through work. If you're freelance or if you have your own investments, and that's pretty easy to move, and you can use the same resources. So Good with Money are really great at showing what the most sustainable options are. Lots of us, because we move jobs, have a problem which is less exciting than it's called, but it's called the small pots problem, which is that we have like 5 or 6 different pensions and 5 or 6 different people, and they're all in different places. So if you have this problem, I know I certainly do, the government have a pension tracing service where you can find out where your pension is meant to be. And I think the first step is making sure you know where everything is and speaking to your current employer.
Awesome, thank you. And moving on with, Make Your Money Matter.
Yeah. And sort of, as I said, switching can sometimes be a little bit complicated. So when you find all your different pots, it might be useful to go and speak to a financial advisor to see if you can put them into one pot. And it's a little bit complex, but definitely worth starting. If you can't quite bear that at the moment and you need a little bit more motivation, then there are some really easy things that you can do to show that you care about it, and that's sign our petition. If you have a workplace pension, so with someone like Aviva or Nest or Legal & General, Scottish Widows, we have a great tool on our website which says, are you net zero? Which is really important. And then you can write to employer or pension provider, and we provided some templates so you can see the kinds of things that you should be asking. To motivate you all to do this, I really encourage you to watch, if you have an evening in lockdown, our pension party, which we held in, I think it was late November, early December. We've got some great people. We've got Sadiq Khan, Deborah Francis White, Aisling B. It's really funny. And genuinely sort of a good time for about 40 minutes. So I recommend you do that to learn a little bit more and get inspired.
Fantastic. And all of these are live links. So when you guys get the toolkit, you'll just be able to click the links and get through to all these fantastic resources. We also included some other ways to green your finances. So switching to your gas and electric providers, investing in green energy. Insurance is another thing that we put money into, and we don't often think about where it's going. So, picking insurance that's good for you and the planet. And, again, if you are fortunate enough to have some money hanging around, then supporting environmental charities is really important at this time, especially because a lot of them have been struggling with COVID, as many of us are probably aware. We've just added a few more resources at the end for kind of rainy days. So there's a great film to watch on the finance industry and how it can tackle the climate crisis. There's a TED Talk focused on the tobacco industry. There's a fantastic Guilty Feminist podcast that features Make My Money Matter, so definitely check that one out. And then there's some of those websites that Jen has alluded to, the Good with Money and the Ethical Consumer, which have so many fantastic resources for home goods and other things, energy, electronics. You can really find everything through there. So this resource kit will be sent to you guys. I cannot take credit for the design. Actually, it was someone from the hub. So everyone's flattering providing comments about it, but I'm glad that everyone's happy with how it looks. Hannah and Jen, thank you. I don't want to end with that. So I will stop sharing my screen now. We just have a couple of last questions for you, but actually I think the idea that that Jen had is really fantastic about doing switch it and checking that. So we will stay in the chat after to start to share this, because it is really kind of a fun thing. Rebecca said, oh, Make Your Money Matter was on her podcast. Wonderful. So there is one last Mentimeter. If you go to the screen, it's 6229771. So you'll have to put in a different number. So if you go to menti.com again, so you might just need to refresh it or just type menti.com one more time. And then, yeah, put that number in the screen, 6229771. I'll put that in the chat. Oh, it's already in the chat. Thank you, Aurelia. So now we're just asking the same question about your pension. Do you guys know where your pension, do you know where your pension money is going? And we'll see what everyone says. Slightly different outcome on this one. Okay, I love it. So a good amount of people do know, which is fantastic. Some people don't, and some people are going to go and find out, which is great, because that's what we'd like to see. And so many people do know. I'm very pleased by that, because I haven't a clue, and this is now on my to-do list. So not applicable for everyone, which is also fantastic. We'll just give it a few more minutes for people to get on there. And if you can't get on for some reason and you want to just share in the chat, that's completely welcome too also, because I know sometimes the programs don't work for everyone. So do feel free. And yeah, we'll just give it one more minute. Okay, and we'll go to the next question. Really is going to turn that live, so just wait 1 second. And yeah, like I said before, I'm just putting in the chat now, the switchit.money, so you can also bring that up on your phone or your computer. But there's a Mentimeter up now. What changes to your finances will you make after this talk? So feel free to input your answers, investigate. So yeah, the idea is one word answers, but we'll make it work with that. You can tell I've put mine in, which is no more HSBC, because I have attempted to switch my money over, but I haven't made it to close my account due to COVID. So it's still sitting there, which is like a little, you know, nagging bird on my corner. Oh, lots more coming in. So swap, speak out, I love it. Research my pension, fantastic. Contact M&S, yes, do it. Let us know how it goes. Current account, no more Barclays, I love it. So a lot of people are going to investigate by the looks of it, which is fantastic. And that's really the idea. So hopefully you guys have found this useful, and hopefully you'll find the toolkit useful. We're always open for resource, for questions and, you know, feedback. So if there's anything that you want to say after, you'll all be getting an email from us. So do feel free to, you know, reply with any feedback or suggestions on how to improve these talks. We're always kind of changing the format. The next one is going to be on air pollution. It will be interactive in a way, and hopefully we'll be brainstorming solutions for the everyday individual. So it should be really exciting. But yeah, if anyone is going to switchit.com and wants to share their findings, then please do put it in the chat, or even, you know, at this point, feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me and let us know what you know, what your bank is, and if it's good or bad, and what you're going to do about it, and we'll hang it for a few more minutes. But otherwise, I think that concludes our evening. So thank you, a huge thank you to Aurelia, and huge thank you to Hannah and Jen for all your input and work. And oh, I see a message from Chloe, in the process of transferring to Mundo, and they have a good report on Switch It. That's where I'm transferring to also. We don't have the link for the next talk, but we will share it to everyone who's been registered for this event. So you will get an email, but I will take note of that. It'll be in 2 weeks, or 2 months, sorry. So it'll be not the last Thursday of February. February is a short month, but the last Thursday of March. So do follow the Impact Hub on Eventbrite, because that's where the events get posted. So if you have your notifications on for them, then you will get a notification for the next event, and we will be sharing this event in a recording. So if you're late or want to share it with other friends and family, we will also do that. And thank you everyone so much for coming.
A big thank you to you, Steph, for organizing it as well.
Thanks, Aurelia. Thanks for stepping in for Sally.
Of course.
Who are you banking with, Aurelia? Am I allowed to ask you that?
Yeah, Citibank, we discussed it.
You couldn't find them on Switch.
But if I have to guess, I would probably say they're not like very forward thinking with their investments.
I'm stopping the recording now. Just